I promised myself that if I ever woke up intoxicated, that this is what I would talk about for this particular exercise, okay? Control. Self-control. I grew up with an intense fear of alcohol and substances, and I know a lot of people who operate very much like me, having a very, very curated idea of yourself and what you want to present in the world, who are also scared of being intoxicated. And not only that, being intoxicated in public. And to that I say, what do you have to lose? Okay, that's not entirely true in the sweeping form of the way. It doesn't apply to everyone. If you are a politician or a large creator or I'm not sure what other occupations require you to be I guess all occupation now, doesn't it? We live in an age of social media wherein anything we put out can be memorialized forever. Bad Luck Brian and the kid who does this. And it's super popular and people love it and all that such. Or green screen kids, yes. Anything you do right now can be memorials for the future. But I don't think the people who are afraid of being intoxicated like I was have the same fear. I don't think the anxiety necessarily stems from the fact that they will be remembered that way. I think it comes from a very, very developed idea of what people like. And if you do those things, people will like you. And anyone will like anyone. You can put anything out into the world, and very likely you'll get that back from it. You will attract people. Whoever you are, however you present, you will attract people who are attracted to that, right? I mean, we live in a society. We live in an age wherein some of our favorite characters have done war crimes. If my speech is any worse, again, intoxicated. We live in a era where some of our favorite characters are torturers and maimers. That we've said, oh no, this is our perfect little sweet bean, a perfect little good time fun boy, right? But even as heinous as they are, they do attract a crowd. So, yes. If you're worried about not being liked, somebody's gonna like you. Somebody is going to find kinship in you and like you when you're not operating at 100% speed, if you're trying to be somebody else. But also, I would definitely urge and push all of you to get out of yourself for a brief moment, right? I think it can be a really, really liberating experience to be unable to hold all that up. Why can't I hold all these lemons? Imagine those lemons are just all these constructs and things that you've put out into the world to be you. This collection of personality traits that you've merged together to become you. It can be very, very liberating to see who likes you the less you've got held up. It can be very empowering to lose control sometimes because it can remind you how much control you really have. When I went to karaoke with a couple of friends in the new year, believe it or not, I was the individual throwing myself onto the floor, mic in hand, belting off key. And that's something that even in my most content-ready game face would struggle to do because of the shame without said alcohol. And I woke up with bruises the next morning on my knees from how hard I threw myself to make a scene, to make a performance. And those bruises, as they faded into February, March, April, reminded me that I have it in me to surprise myself. That as clean and as buttoned up as I generally am, I do have a little bit of party animal in me, enough to come home from clubbing bruised. And on the flip side of that, we don't necessarily know how much we're holding on to until we've dropped it. That might also be a thing. I think part of the reason that we have such a sort of developed idea of ourselves and control ourselves so stringently is the Lin-Manuel Miranda, Aaron Burr-ism of, I'm the one thing in my life I can control. People will hurt me. The sky will go rainy when I don't want it to. I will not get a callback from all the jobs I threw out. There are so many ways that, completely aside of ourselves, completely aside of what we can do at any given moment, the world will just screw us over, right? And there's this stoicist idea where, oh, if I can control me, that's the most control I can exert on this world. If I can control how I react, if I take that pain and act as though there was nothing behind it, that there was no injury, then I could will into being in this earth that there was none. Did we go too far? Pardon me. That's self-control, right? I think dropping it and seeing how much you're holding and seeing how you are without all of that running, without all those background processes running, that is also incredibly interesting to see. I was talking with a person in the comments recently about moments of weakness and what that reveals, and if there's any truth behind that moment of weakness, if you're this person, you're that person for making that mistake, or if that is just that, a mistake, a brief moment in a canon of actions that you've already taken. And if we take those mistakes too seriously, if we make those mistakes balloon out into what really quantifies your entire life, that's terrible. I've always hated that. I've hated the idea that we could ruin our lives in a night. I think it's warranted to a certain degree, but overall, I think most things aren't worth losing yourself, like losing the chance to be yourself more often for. And that's why I say make this mistake. Find a period of time where you know you'll be physically safe, maybe around people who you trust not to record you and put you on TikTok. And start with something that isn't necessarily or entirely dangerous. Just have a couple of sippies and see what it's like when you stop being perfect. Perfect has always been the enemy of good. That's something I like telling my chatters. Perfect has always been the enemy of good. And if the only reason you hadn't taken a look at your camera died, pardon me. I guess the clock doesn't work anymore. Let me just turn that on. Camera died, sorry. If the only reason you haven't given yourself to something very briefly just to see what would happen, find it in you, perhaps, to do so. Because ultimately, well, I disagree with the idea that we're the only one thing in our life that we can control. I do agree with the idea that you are the most important person in your life. You will spend your entire life with yourself, and learning new things about yourself can be really empowering, really fun, and it can be really, gosh. Gosh. I lost it. Y'all are great. Ding ding, 10 minutes.